These are real stories from Reddit. Creepy moments that might have a logical explanation, but are still terrifying enough to stay with you for years. From haunted homes, to impossible dreams, to figures that return after a decade. These experiences sound unreal, until you realize they actually happened. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're diving into one of Reddit's most unsettling questions. What scary or horrifying things have happened to you that could have a plausible explanation, but still freak you out? The answers people shared are chilling. A house where the cabinets open on their own, recurring dreams that led someone out of bed at exactly 3 a.m., and a faceless figure that appeared in childhood and came back 11 years later. These stories may have explanations, but it doesn't make them any less terrifying. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and let's explore 3 real experiences that blur the line between logic and the unknown. The haunted apartment with too many plausible explanations. I've shared this before on Reddit, but I truly believe I once lived in a haunted apartment. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom row home near the professional and graduate schools. The owner was a dentist who originally bought it so his kids could live there while they were in school. Once they moved out, he rented the rooms individually at a great rate to other students. The important detail here is that there were always new people cycling in and out. He would post ads for a single bedroom, have the person meet the current tenants, and each roommate had their own lease. Some people stayed for a couple of years, others filtered out every school year. And these weren't partying college kids. Everyone living there was late 20s to early 30s, young professionals or graduate students transitioning into adulthood. So, why did I think it was haunted? First, sometimes you would come downstairs and every single cabinet in the kitchen would be open. People suggested sleepwalking or someone wandering around at night getting food, but it happened with different groups of people and no single tenant was present every time it occurred. Others said maybe the building was tilted and the doors swung open on their own, but some cabinets opened in opposite directions, so that explanation didn't make much sense. And except for the times when all of them opened at once, they stayed shut just fine. Second, the back door was a sliding glass door leading into a small fenced yard like most row homes. One day, a roommate called me over. There were hundreds, maybe even thousands of large black flies slamming themselves into the glass. We could hear the pinging sound as they hit. This went on for a while, until most of them were either stunned on the ground or dead. The remaining flies eventually flew away. We went outside afterward and swept up an entire dustpan full of them. A plausible explanation is that they were fleeing a predator, but it was still incredibly strange to witness. Third, the random leaks in the roof. But here's the odd part. They didn't seem tied to any type of weather. Not to rain, not to snow, not to anything. They just happened at random. The drips looked like water and left water stains on the ceiling. But if you put a bucket under them to catch it, the liquid was a sticky brown tar. The landlord had professionals check it out twice while I lived there, and he told me he'd had it inspected a couple of times before I moved in. No one ever found anything to fix. The plausible explanation is that moisture somehow got inside and picked up old building material on the way out. Some people also say that past cigarette use can cause tar to seep through walls, but still, none of it explained why the leaks happened so randomly. Fourth, the cat. When I moved in, 2 couples were moving out, and one bachelor was still living there. He had a giant cat. If you tried to pick it up, it wouldn't scratch, but it would do everything in its power to get down, then walk away and give you this look, like you'd offended it. A month after I moved in, the owner of the cat said he was moving out. He left, but he left the cat behind. I made sure it had food and water, but it never touched any of it. It mostly hid, and that was fine. A week later, one of the past tenants came to pick up some leftover things. I mentioned the cat still being there, and they both looked at each other and sighed. They said the guy had 2 cats, one he actually cared for, and another that just lurked in the basement. He apparently lied to the landlord about how many pets he had. 2 weeks later, the guy came back to pick up the last of his belongings. I mentioned the cat again, and he got mad. He insisted he only had 1 cat, and that he'd already taken it. But the thing is, myself and the people who had moved in kept seeing the cat. We heard it at night, yet it never ate any of the food we left out. And even after the house was treated for mice, we still saw the cat wandering around. The plausible explanation is that a neighbor had a cat that came and went through some unknown route. But it was strange that so many of us saw it, yet no one ever caught it, touched it, or figured out how it kept getting inside. At one point, we had a roommate who rescued an abused pit bull. The dog was terrified of everything, but it never reacted to the cat being there, even though it freaked out at every animal it saw during walks. So that was the haunted apartment, and all the logical explanations people have given me over the years. I should note that nothing bad ever happened to me there. It was just a very strange place to live. Some strange experiences can be explained, at least a little. Open cabinets, unexplained leaks, a mysterious animal in the basement. Maybe there's logic behind it somewhere. But sometimes, the things that happen to you feel too real, too consistent, and too close to your own body and mind to write off as coincidence. This next story isn't just about a creepy house. It's about dreams that didn't stay in dreams, and a voice that kept pulling someone out of bed at the exact same time, night after night. Every night at 3 a.m., I woke up in a dream that wasn't a dream. I moved into a cottage on a mountain. My backyard was nothing but a tree line, and at night the moon lit everything so well that it hardly felt like nighttime at all. Not long after moving in, I began having recurring dreams, the same dream, every single time. In the dream, I would see myself sleeping in my bed, almost like I was watching from outside my body. Then the dream would shift from a third-person view to first person. I would suddenly wake up to the sound of a whispering female voice. In the dream, an overwhelming thirst would hit me. It felt unbearable. I would climb out of bed, open the French doors, and walk toward the kitchen sink to get a glass of water. As I approached the sink, the whispering voice would get louder. I still couldn't understand it. It sounded like a foreign language, but not one I'd ever heard before or since. Then, standing in the kitchen, looking out the window above the sink toward the tree line in my backyard, brightly lit by the moon, the voice suddenly became clear. She said, "The devil is in the woods." Right as she spoke those words, a shadow darted quickly behind the tree line, and that's when I would wake up. But the terrifying part wasn't the dream itself. It was that I always woke up standing in the exact same spot where I had been standing in the dream, right there in my kitchen, staring out the window. This happened almost every week for the entire time I lived in that house. And every time, it happened around, or exactly at, 3 a.m. Some nightmares follow you only in sleep, but others follow you into your waking life. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing you'll ever see isn't a voice in the woods, but a figure silently watching you, one that never should have existed in the first place. This next story starts when the storyteller was just a child. But the truly horrifying part is that it didn't end there. The faceless man returned after 11 years, and he still knows where I live. When I was 8 years old, my room was on the second floor of our house, with a window facing the street. I liked that room because there was a street light right outside that made everything glow a soft orange at night. I was terrified of the dark, so the light always made me feel a little safer. One night, I had stayed up reading. I had just discovered Percy Jackson when I heard a rustling sound. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I thought it was my cat, but she was asleep in the hallway, right outside my door. That's when I realized the sound was coming from outside. I was terrified, but I couldn't not check. So I slowly sat up in my bed, got onto my knees, and peeked out the window. There was a man crouched in our flower bed, hiding in the lavender bush. He was wearing an old black hoodie and jeans. His hands were so pale they almost glowed under the streetlight and the moonlight. I was scared, but also confused. If someone wanted to break into our house, why would they choose the front yard, directly under a lit window? And he wasn't even looking at our house. He was facing the street, like he was watching for something. I ducked back into bed and pulled the blankets over my head. He came back every night for the next 12 days, always crouching in the exact same spot, always in the bright glow of the streetlight. I don't remember why I didn't tell my parents. On the 13th night, as I watched him, something changed. He froze. He had been still before, but now he stopped moving completely, like a statue, like concrete. He slowly stood up, and he was tall, so tall. My bedroom window was at least 15 feet above the ground, and the top of his head almost reached the sill. But somehow, his torso looked normal. He wasn't stretched out. It was like only his legs were impossibly long, or he was standing on something invisible. He slowly turned his head toward me and stared, except he didn't have a face. It wasn't that it was blank skin, it was that, under the hood of his jacket, there was nothing but darkness. A shadow so deep I could see the faint outline of the back of the hood through it. The light from my room should have lit up his face, but there was nothing. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, I could feel them staring into mine. It felt like he climbed inside my skin. My whole body felt wrong, like he poured shadows directly into me. Then he raised his completely white hand, so pale it didn't even look human, and made a shh gesture where his mouth should have been. And then, he was gone. He didn't fade or walk away. He simply wasn't there anymore. For years I convinced myself it was just a recurring nightmare. I told myself I had made him up, or maybe he was part of a story I wrote, or a book I read. But then, a month ago, he came back. I'm 20 years old now, living in a third-floor apartment. I had just finished studying math and went to close my window. It was past midnight and the desert gets cold at night, and he was there, staring up at me. He was just as tall as he was 11 years ago, so his head didn't reach my window. But he didn't have to, he just stared. And that same heavy, molten dread filled my entire body. He raised his hand again, making the exact same shh gesture. And then he disappeared, instantly, exactly like before. The next morning, still trying to convince myself I imagined it, I checked the bushes below my window. There were 2 columns of broken branches and crushed leaves, right where he had been standing. To put it simply, the same dark figure has returned, after more than a decade. Later, someone replied to my post asking, "Is it possible that you're schizophrenic?" And another person joked, "So he told you to be quiet, and you told all of Reddit?" I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. These 3 stories remind us that sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't fully explain. A house where cabinets open on their own, a voice whispering at 3 a.m. until dreams spill into reality, and a faceless figure that returns after more than a decade. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation behind each event, or maybe these are the kinds of moments that slip through the cracks of our understanding. Either way, they leave a mark. The kind you don't forget, even years later. If you want more true stories like these, creepy, mysterious, and impossible to shake off, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if any of these moments gave you chills, leave a like to support the channel and help bring more terrifying stories your way. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes the darkness is closer than you think.